Hey, what's up, people? Why am I whispering? No, I'm not about to get into ASMR. I'm just imitating what this Game Boy Color is doing. Even though the volume is all the way up by turning it in this direction, you can barely hear the thing. I have to put it like completely up to the microphone so that you can hear what's going on. All the way on the speaker, you might be able to hear it. So the volume is not only low, but it also sounds a little crunchy. Now, I recently picked up this Game Boy Color off somebody on OfferUp, and the funny thing is that I actually got it from the same dude that I got this other Game Boy Pocket from. This is the one that needed like extensive repairs, if you happen to have watched that video. And so, yeah, this one was sold as the volume or the speaker just like doesn't put out very much audio. So I don't know if the speaker itself is damaged or if there's something electronic going on. I guess we'll find out. We're going to have to open it up. So let's get stuff off of it. So there's 6 screws to remove, and they're all tri-wing screws. And because I'm so cool, I have a screwdriver. Actually, I'm not that cool, but I do have a screwdriver. So let's go ahead and remove all 6 of these screws. All right, and that's the last of the screws. Let's dump those out. And let's remove the back. I mean, we're not going to see much, I don't think. Nothing obvious right off the bat. The only other thing I can think of is maybe something wrong with this jack, but it almost sounds like a physical problem with the speaker for sure. So there's just 3 more screws to remove from the bottom of the board. Oh, the only other issue with this unit is that the D-pad doesn't quite respond very well when you push in the left direction. So we're going to see if maybe it just needs a bit of a cleaning or if I'm going to have to look into replacing the pads or what. So that should, let's just release the LCD by pushing up on those 2 tabs. Oh, wow, it's longer than I thought. There we go. So now this should come out. And there we go. Let's take a look at those D-pads. It looks pretty well used, so maybe it's just going to need replacement D-pads, but that's not a big deal. I can do that later. It does look a little shiny on there, so I'll give it a cleaning, and we'll see if it responds any better. That one also looks a little questionable. And there's a speaker. That brownish-looking stuff looks like it's just adhesive. I can't tell if the cone has become detached from the rest of the basket. I'm going to try something. I'm just going to put this board to the back of the case. I'm going to put the batteries in, pop in the game, and turn it on and see if me pushing on the cone changes the audio in any sort of way. So, turn this on. Make sure this is all the way up. No, still sounds about the same. I mean, it could also be that the coil itself is bad. What I could do is just remove it and try putting in a different speaker and see if the sound gets any louder. So let me see what I've got. So unfortunately, I'm not going to have a direct replacement for this speaker. I got this other one that's similar looking that we can at least test with. But before I actually try doing that, I'm going to plug in this headphone jack into the jack and see if it, or headphone plug into the jack and see if it changes the audio at all. It could be that there's just dirty contacts inside of the headphone jack, but let's see. No, that doesn't seem to have changed the output at all. Actually, one thing I didn't even think about is let's see if there's even audio coming out of this jack at all. Okay, so I plugged in the other end of this extension to headphones. I'm going to plug it into the jack. Oh no, that sounds fine. I mean, I know you can't hear it because you're not wearing the headphones, but yeah, there's audio coming out of there. And I just realized that popping in the speaker is going to do me no good because the pad's been ripped off and it tore the wire that goes to the coil. So let's see if I have another one. Well, since all I'm trying to do is see if there's any audio coming out of these 2 pins going to the speaker, I'm just going to use this speaker that I had in my little speaker junk pin thing. And I'll touch these 2 wires to those 2 contacts on the board and see if we get audio coming out of this one. Okay, so make sure the volume's all the way up. And I'm just going to touch it to those 2 pins. Oh, there it is. Let's take a close-up of the speaker and see if maybe we can figure out what's wrong with it. So it looks like the cone is well adhered to the rest of the basket, so it doesn't look like it's like popped off or anything. And it would have made a difference if I would have been pushing on it while it was playing audio. And there is some corrosion looking stuff on those two wires coming from the terminals and going into the cone. So I'm wondering if maybe there's something wrong with that. Maybe it's slightly shorted or something. I mean, there wouldn't really be anything going on over on this end because, as we heard, there is audio coming out of it. So the coil is at least somewhat intact. Not that it's necessarily completely making good contact. Let's check the resistance across the coil and see what we get. Okay, so let's see what we get. I've limited the range to 300 ohms because it really shouldn't be like that high. So yeah, about 8 ohms. That sounds like a regular speaker. Oh, I just heard what happened. So it sounds like the coil itself has detached from the cone. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to have you hear this, but I'll put up the speaker to the microphone and I'll shake it and you can actually hear it like hitting against the cone. So let's see. No, I don't think it's coming through. I tried again. I think maybe it would have come through now. But you can see in there, I've kind of magnified this a lot. You can see that shiny copper-looking thing in there as I shake the speaker, how it vibrates back and forth. Yeah, that's the coil, so it's definitely not attached to the cone anymore. So the easiest way to fix this problem is obviously to just get a new speaker and swap it out, and then it'll be completely fine. But since we have nothing to lose, let's try repairing the speaker and doing some surgery on it and see if we can get it working again. So I think the first thing we should probably do is try to get these wires off of these terminals and bring them out so that way we can pull the cone completely off of the basket. And then maybe we can reattach the coil back to the cone. So let's see how that goes. If I end up breaking these wires, well, then we're pretty much hosed. But let's give it a shot. I mean, you have nothing to lose. So first thing I want to do is remove as much of this solder as I can from each terminal. So that way I can free up those wires. Okay, I forgot that on speakers like this, the wire is not adhered to that terminal. It's actually soldered to another terminal closer to where the wires come out. So I'm going to have to melt this area, and at the same time, I'll try to lift up with this blade and see if I can get the wire to come up. So just going to try to be careful. There we go, that's melting. Remove some of this adhesive. I think there's the wire. Okay, so it came up. If I keep this adhesive hot enough, I don't think it'll pull the wire and it won't break. There it goes. Got one out. Let's try to do the same on the other side. There's the wire. Pull this adhesive off. I think the trick is to keep this adhesive warmed up so that it's soft. You can see I'm not even touching it there. And just the heat from the soldering iron is making it like move. So this might work. But it's detaching. It's just kind of a slow process. We don't want to go too fast. Don't want to break these wires. I'm going to change up the strategy a little bit. I'm going to use this really fine bevel tip to try to get these wires to separate while at the same time softening the adhesive. And, you know, it would have been like so much infinitely easier to just get a new speaker and replace it. But no, I got to put myself through this torture.
We do things not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
Oh, is that so?
Yes.
All right, then. Okay, so I managed to get the wires to release all the way up to the edge of the cone, and it looks like it partially melted the plastic a little bit, but that's not a big deal. So now I need to try to separate the cone from the rest of the basket. Looks like there's not that much adhesive over on this edge. There's a lot more right there, as we can see. So maybe I can try to gently cut around it and try to lift it up. Let's see if we can do that. Oh, that's separating real easy. Yeah, that's way easier than I thought it was going to be. There we go. Got it. And yeah, this glue that they use is like really crispy, so that's probably why the voice coil ended up breaking off the cone. As you can see, yeah, there it is. It's totally free. It's not supposed to be like that. And that's inside where the magnet is. Looks like it's a little rusty. I wonder if that's from the adhesive, like releasing something. Maybe like degassing or something caused that to get all rusty looking. So I wasn't sure exactly how I'd be able to recenter this coil onto the cone, but because of the way the cone is designed, it appears that if I just push down on the coil, it basically kind of like self-centers itself. And if I could show you without my fingers in the way, right there, as you can see, it looks like it's pretty centered. So I think if I just put some adhesive underneath it and between the cone itself, I think it should be enough to bond it. And thing is, I mean, I've rebuilt some subwoofers before, and normally what you would do is you would not have the dust cap on in the center, and then you center the voice coil first to the magnet by using some sort of shim, and then after that's like nice and centered, then you glue the outside. But we can't do that on this because, as we can see, like the outside is basically the only thing that holds the entire thing together. There is no dust cap. So, but I think there's enough of a gap between the magnet and like the pole piece that just trying to get that at least somewhat centered will be just fine. The outside diameter of the cone itself pretty much centers the rest of it. So, I mean, we're just kind of playing around with this thing at the moment. I'm not trying to go for like a precision rebuild or anything. Let's just see if we can make it work. Like I said, worst case scenario, I just order a new speaker anyway. But I'm going to try to clean off as much of this crispy adhesive as I can. I'm just going to use some like isopropyl alcohol and a Q-tip. Try to get a bunch of that stuff off. Try to remove as much dust as I can. And we'll try to re-adhere this voice coil to the cone. I might put a little bit of adhesive over on the wires as well, because as we can see, that adhesive is so crispy that everything's just sort of like coming apart. And as far as adhesives go, I'll probably just use this T7000 stuff that I've found on eBay. I think there's an actual product that's supposed to be T7000, but I think this is actually a knockoff. But it's like a black, really flexible adhesive. It's meant to be used for like phones and things like that. But I think it'll work for this situation, so we'll see what happens. Okay, I think since this adhesive is probably just going to flake off, and if I put anything over it, then over time it's just going to break off as well. So I'm just going to remove the entirety of the voice coil off of the cone and try to clean off as much of this as I can. As you can see, it's just easily flaking off. And if I use a Q-tip with some isopropyl alcohol, maybe I can get that to come off a little easier. No, I think I have to scratch it up first. This is beyond excessive. Nobody would do this in real life. All right, so I think that's about as clean as I'm going to be able to get that thing. It's not too bad. Looks pretty good. As far as the coil goes, I don't think I'm going to try to remove too much of that adhesive because I might accidentally unwind some of it, and I really want to avoid that. So I think I'm just going to leave that intact as is. So what I'm going to do now is, first of all, I'm going to make sure that I have the right side facing down. So that is the cone, or the centerpiece is poking out. So this is the side that would go towards the inside. So the coil is going to go in there, but I want to put some adhesive. And it looks like what they've done is it has like a molded ring that the voice coil actually sits in. So that's definitely going to make things much easier. So I'm going to try to carefully get a little bead of the adhesive into that groove and then drop the coil right onto it. And I guess I'll try to align it so that the wires are coming out the same place that they originally were, which I think is like right there because it kind of melted a little bit. It doesn't really matter too much where the wires come out from. So let's just go ahead and try this. To make things easier on me, I'm just going to tape down the cone just a little bit, just around the like edges like that, just on two sides. There we go. Just so it's not trying to shift around on me. And the adhesive has a very fine sort of like a syringe tip. So I'm going to try to get some of this stuff on there. And I'm going to try to spread a really, really thin layer of it around into that groove. That should be more than enough, and that actually looks like it's way too much, to be honest. So just try to get but I think it's going to shrink down a bit. So let's see what happens. Okay, that feels like it centered itself. I'm going to release it. I mean, it already sounded like crap. I think the worst that can happen is it'll still sound like crap. So we'll find out. See if maybe I can get some of this bulk to sort of spread around a little bit. Yeah, it'll be fine. I'll let it set for a bit. Okay, I taped the two wires down just to hold them up against the cone. And I'm going to put a little bit of adhesive on those as well. I'm going to try to be a lot lighter. Just going to squeeze out maybe a tiny little bit, and then I'll try spreading it out. And this has been drying for a few minutes now, and I think it should be solid enough that I can take this apart. I'm going to just hold these wires down while I remove the tape carefully. And now let's just free the cone. I didn't want to touch it because I don't want to get grease on it, but I just did. Okay, so this is clean, and I did wipe the pole piece a bit. It was pretty grimy, so I mean that's as good as that's going to get. I'm not going to try to pop that out. And I cleaned out the outside, so that looks pretty okay. And let's before we glue it in, let's just do a quick little test fit and see how that's going to go. And these wires are on the side. So I can't tell exactly how much movement this thing has. Uh-oh. Well, that didn't get glued to the to the center or the pole piece. Oh no. Okay, looks like I left that adhesive in the middle just a little too bulky. You can see that it kind of stuck right there. And it's not completely dry yet, so it is kind of tacky. I'll let it dry a little bit more before I try that again. Okay, round two. So it's still a bit like tacky, but it's not anywhere near as liquid anymore, so it's not going to stick. And what I did is I designed this ring that measures a thickness of like 0.8 millimeters, and then I printed it out. And I'm going to use this to try to apply some pressure to the outside of the cone. And with just having that on, and if I push on the center just a little bit, we can see that the cone is able to move up and down. So really, that's all it needs to be able to do. It's not like it's going to have like inches of excursion or anything. It just needs to be able to vibrate a bit to create some sound. So I'm going to remove this ring. And we're going to apply some adhesive all around the perimeter, including overlapping where the two wires come out. And then once I've done that, I'm going to put the ring back on. And then I'm going to use this washer. And if I didn't make a mess, good thing I didn't adhere it yet. So I'm going to put the washer down. And then after that, I'm going to weigh it down with this weight. It's just basically like a metal slug. And that's just going to sit on top of there. I'm going to let everything like sit. And once I'm happy that that's all nice and secure, I can take this apart and I'll be able to take the two wires, bring them back down and solder them onto that little strip of board in the back. Okay, I've got everything ready. I'm going to quickly try to run through this without talking because the less distraction, the better. And there we go. So I'm just going to let that sit for a while. Come back to it in a few minutes. Okay, before it sticks too much, I am going to remove the ring that I printed. It's pulling the cone up. No. There we go. I was able to remove it without doing any damage. That was a dangerous stunt. Okay, I think that's adhered well enough that I can jump to the next step, which is soldering these wires to the back. Although I think maybe I should have just left the ring on. It looks kind of ugly now. But the cone is on there, so I think as long as it's attached, it should be fine. So let's put these wires on, and then we can put this back into the Game Boy and test it out and see if it makes any sounds. All right, got the wires in position, so let's tack them down. And they still have a little bit of the old adhesive left on them. I'll see if I can scrape some of that off. Actually, I don't think I'm going to bother. Let's just leave it like that. That's fine. Okay, so let's get these two wires soldered back on. Okay, there we go. All right, let's give it a shot. Okay, let's get this back on just so I can put the batteries on. Let's put the game in. Here we go. Make sure the volume's all the way up. It works. And I guess the cartridge isn't going right. Yeah, that's totally working. I mean, this isn't really loud to begin with. These Game Boys were not that loud, but... Yep, so the sound is working again. That's all the speaker had wrong with it was the voice coil was detached from the cone. And I did give the pads a bit of a cleaning with some isopropyl alcohol, but I didn't do that on video. So it's definitely responding now. Like you would do this and it would not respond at all. You had to push it hard and then it would go to the left. But everything seems to be working pretty well. Buttons are responding. So, yep, that's seems to be working totally fine. Okay, and there we go. Put all the screws back on. And that's pretty much it. So yeah, it's working pretty well again. I don't have another Game Boy Color that I can compare to see if the volume level is exactly the same or not. I mean, it sounds kind of low. I tried to compare it to the Game Boy Pocket. It really does not sound that much different. But like I said, it could be maybe like a little lower now that, you know, the speaker's been taken apart and all that. But I mean, it's working and you can hear it just fine. You're probably not going to hear it on the microphone, but yeah, it's okay. And it's working and all the buttons are working. So yep, everything's responding like it should. So that's going to do it for this one. I don't really advocate anybody trying to repair a speaker in this manner, but I mean, it's doable. I was able to do it. It's just really, really tedious, and you got to have some tools that you know can help you see what's going on. But yep, that's going to do it for this one. Made it to the end. Thank you all for watching once again. I will see you guys around the bench.